morning, ladies and gentlemen. We all face demons, every one of us. Some are basically annoyances, and we get over them quickly. Some become an obsession or an addiction, and we think that we can control this. A lot of us will think, well, if I take this pill or if I join this program, then the demon will go away and I'll win. Ask yourself this. How's that work for you? Doesn't work very well for most people. The sad fact is recovery is not a linear process and healing has no finish line. Now, while I wish that line was mine, it's from my guest today, my friend, Lara Scriba. Let me tell you something about her. Her passion is to support others to heal through holistic lens that's been nurtured through her background in nursing, in Reiki, in yoga, in stress resilience, and ayurvedic, I always pronounce that wrong, ayurvedic habits, as along with eating disorder recovery. Now, Lara shines a light on the wisdom that your clients already have, and she cultivates a deep connection and self-trust. She's also a contributing author to the newly released book, Win the Wellness War. You can get that on Amazon. If you haven't gotten it, go get it. Okay. Lara, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you, Frank, for having me. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's our pleasure. Lara, you wrote a chapter in this book, and tell us about this demon that you were facing and what impact did it have throughout your life?
Yeah, so I wrote a little bit about my eating disorder recovery journey. And so in the beginning, just really talking about what it is, what it kind of feels like to be in that experience in the beginning of those recovery stages, and how bumpy it can feel, how challenging it can be. That line that you said, I think when it came to that, like during my recovery period, just desperately wanting there to be a linear process, feeling like feeling like I was set up that, we've given you the tools and you're supposed to heal this, you're supposed to, move through, or at least that was my expectations. I'm sure the therapist and everybody else had a longer timeline than I did for myself, but wanting these to really line up, tee it up, and like, let's knock it out of the park kind of thing. And it's not that way. And it wasn't until, hindsight is 2020, that is actually a beautiful thing, that we're able to move through all these different stages. But at the time, you can feel a bit desperate to find the solutions, to find the answers, and to feel like you're making progress forward in a consistent way. And then that way you can get out of that depth of suffering that you're experiencing.
Exactly right. Is that we all want instant relief, instant gratification. And so if you do these 12 steps, then you'll be fine. Or if you do this, if you take this pill, you'll be fine. If you go to this therapy session, you'll be fine. It's like grief. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. It doesn't go linear, as you said.
Right, exactly. When I think for the expectations as well, when it came to it being a lifelong process as well, is just that we're human beings that are moving through experiences all throughout our lives. And we all know that we have, stumbling blocks that we come across, and we have these times that, can knock us back down. And so recognizing that there's always going to be a healing process, a growth process, a continuation of just being who we are as humans, and not the, I don't want to make it sound, not the dangers of existing in the world, but you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's vulnerable. Like, you have to put yourself out there, and you get hurt sometimes. But it's really learning, and what I've learned is really about learning those coping skills of how can I allow myself to step back and heal? How can I set up systems so that way I can process every single day, instead of it all accumulating and then manifesting in this very big way. And then it, for me, it ended up that I had to kind of withdraw from my normal life. I was in high school when my eating disorder started, and it ended up that I got pulled from school my senior year and was hospitalized, and just had to step back from everything in order to just focus on this one thing in order to heal in that way, and expecting that when I got out of the hospital that it was going to be done.
Yes, exactly.
Move on. And that was not the case at all. I tried to re-enter high school mid-year, and it did not work out very well at all. I still was really struggling with my mind and depression and threats of hurting myself. It was just a lot of things coming together, and then that just disappointment in myself. There was so many resources that went in. I mean, I have a wonderful family. They were so supportive, setting up structures so that way I could be at home and be homeschooled for the rest of the year. And feeling like I kept relapsing, and my mind wasn't feeling better, even if I could control the behaviors for a little while, but still felt just as miserable on the inside. So it took a lot of years to feel like I had a grasp on the tools, that it felt like it was a consistent thing that I could rely on, versus feeling like I was kind of hitting an edge of that panic state,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
scrambling to come back and find some sense of normal. So,
Wow, exactly. You wrote in your chapter a line that I love. I want you to touch on that. You said you were drowning just below the water line.
mm,
Elaborate on that.
yeah, and like for me, water symbolizes, emotions as well, and that's why I kind of put that there. Uh, it just there, I was overwhelmed with emotions. I didn't know how to handle my own emotions. I didn't know how to handle other people's emotions, expectations, both myself and others, and also I think with eating disorders, or what I hear and my definite experience of it was that it is just steeped in shame. It's not something that you talk about. I know that when I was hospitalized, my friends kind of didn't know. They didn't even know I had any issues, and then they didn't really know what that meant. And so there was a definitely like a kind of stepping back and feeling kind of shocked, that was going on in the first place. So I think it's something that can go undetected for a very long time. And because it feels like such a desperate grasp at coping and easing the suffering, that the idea of somebody taking it away makes you panic. So you keep it very, very down low, because you don't want somebody to take it away from you, because if they do, you've got nothing and you feel like you're going to drown. So it was this really strange, like wanting help, but then being so afraid that if they took it away, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have those other mechanisms in place in order to keep me afloat. So
That's a great explanation of that. Now, Laura lives on a boat. So what you
yes,
see behind her is a boat. So she relates a lot of things
now
to
I do
water.
float. Yes, I made sure of it.
Exactly. Now, Laura, you entered
That way.
nursing school. And in your first year, you wrote you had this revelation when you entered nursing school. What did you discover that first year?
Yes, I feel like I was really gifted. It wasn't my very first experience with thing, but it was I think because it was the mix between, the Western and Eastern philosophies coming together at once.
Hmm.
I had gone already through, my, hospitalization, and was in a state of recovery. I fluctuated for many years, back and forth. But my kind of last hurrah to to kind of exist in the world and to make something for myself was to go into my nursing career. And so I was in nursing school, and it was one of my instructors. She brought us in the room, or me. She asked me specifically to come in and asked me to lay everything on the table, just come in, and asked me to do an assessment on a patient. And so of course I'm anxious and nervous, and I'm just rattling everything off, and she says, no, I want you to stand here. I want you to close your eyes for a minute and take a few breaths. And then I just want you to look at your patient and then tell me what you see. And, I was able to, kind of quiet my body. And then it was more like an emotional assessment of or energetic. What is it that you feel? What is it that you sense? And so though I knew her, medical background, actually looking at her as a human being versus looking at her as a disease process or symptoms to manage, or something to arrange on her bed because it was off. It was being able to look at the actual human spirit and how do you care for that. So I think that's what really it also solidified, because that is what brought me into nursing. In the book, I talk about my brother had had an accident, and it was a life-threatening. He had a brain injury, and he had to have all kinds of surgeries to replace the skull after a car accident. And when we would go into the trauma unit, you know, he would be in there, and there were just different states that we would find him, and we found that it would correlate depending on the nurse that he had. So there was this one nurse that just knew how to talk with him, could be very kind and compassionate, and she didn't agitate him, and he would be very calm. And it was before he, you know, was able to, you know, be back in his own body fully, and because he didn't quite know what was going on at that point. So it was just the way that she was able to treat him, and it brought such ease, obviously, to him, but then also to us as a family, you know, walking in there and just being able to see him at ease and at peace, and to be able to rest and to heal. And not that the other nurses were bad in any way, but it was much more a mechanical. You could see the way that they were moving through the room, you know, it's IVs and medications and whatever they needed to do at the time, which I totally understand now, being a nurse, you know, there's a lot to handle and cover. But that was just such a huge piece for me. And it also kind of opened the window of like, can you look at yourself the same way, instead of looking at yourself as a project to fix and something that you need, a disease process you need to manage, or symptoms that you need to manage? Can you look at yourself as a human being? And so that was the first kind of glimpse into that.
That's a great point. I was a medic in the military, and after in the Vietnam War, I wasn't in Vietnam, but it was when they wounded would come back, and every day the psychiatrists would tell us that all the time. They said, stop being clinical, talk, listen to what they have to say,
Yeah.
and relate to what they have to say, because a big part of the healing is here, it's in your head.
Absolutely.
And you told us that you had in the book, you read a book by Louise Hayes. Now, what impact, now you started the nursing school. Now, what impact did Louise Hayes have on that momentum you were building?
Well, and it's so funny, because these days it's very mainstream, right? These concepts, and many books have been written about, you know, this connection or this correlation of that our thoughts become things, right? Like the way, like you were saying, what's in our mind then can manifest in the body. And though I don't, you know, I don't subscribe to that we create our disease process, or there's blame or shame when it comes to that. There is no way in that. But it was this opening of that there was a part of our experience that we can influence, which, you know, coming from a place where I felt like I had no control over my eating disorder, I had no control over the thoughts or trying to manage, you know, not doing the behaviors, you know, that concept just felt so foreign to me. I felt like I was just following somebody else's scripted, like, you need to do this. And if I could just follow what they told me, rather it being, look inside, what are you experiencing? And from that place, you can start to heal. You can start to actually make it an inviting, or in the beginning, just a simply tolerable experience to be in your body. And so I feel like, because she has a, you know, in her book, it's like, it will give a disease process, and then it'll give the mental state, you know, or the kind of issue, anxiety, or whatever it is that is going on, that then creates that can feed into that physical manifestation within the body. And so it was like looking at that and then thinking, okay, so what am I experiencing symptom wise? And then what are the thoughts that I need to start managing? And so I think when it comes to that as well, it gives a sense of agency, because, so like I said, I was kind of handing everything over. And in the beginning, that I needed to do that. I needed to be told what to eat, when to eat, you know, I had to be monitored on all the things, because I wasn't trustworthy. I couldn't trust myself, and nobody else could either, right? I needed to have that in place to stabilize. But after that point, you have to rebuild that sense of self-trust. And that was that first glimpse into that, of like, how can I get to know myself and then start to show up for myself in a consistent way?
Great points. Great points. I've interviewed some shamanic healers, and you said something in your chapter that just rang true from so many of those that I've talked to. You said healing may not always equate to curing.
Mhm.
What's that mean to you?
And I don't know if I'm, extra sensitive when it comes to, just being a nurse and never wanting to claim. I think people, when you say that you're a light worker, or people, they're healers. I never assume that that means that the disease process is going to just disappear. So there's lots of people that can heal as they're dealing with their cancer diagnosis, or they can heal as they're managing their MS. It may not be that it's something that we can completely get rid of the disease process, but it can change the way that you experience within your body. And like I said, when you have the disease process, but then what are we adding to it? What kind of angst within your body are you adding to it because of the distress in the mind? So if we can take care of this piece here, this then becomes more manageable. And no, it's not desired in any way, and we wish we could change, and then of course those are the Western medicine, we bring in the surgeries and the medications and all of that. They work. That's what I love. They work beautifully together. But like I said, it's this agency piece of we can take the responsibility on to heal ourselves, to calm our systems, to create, work with different modalities to create a sense of ease and peace within our own beings, to be a resource for joy, and then look at the world and how can we also use the world as a way to support ourselves. And I think that within that, then to me, that's what healing means.
Exactly. I love that explanation. The disease may not go away, and it may ultimately, you may ultimately succumb to the disease, but you're more at peace. I understand this is what I have. And one of them told me, we have to have, you want to have gratitude for that. And I went, are you out of your mind? I want to be grateful that I had cancer. And they said, no, not that you had cancer, but the experience that is bringing you and what you can learn from it, what you can gain, and how you can help others through that process.
Well, and I think, and I definitely had to, move through that with my eating disorder. Like I was very angry about it for a long time, and also feeling what I had taken from my life and feeling like I had missed out on so much because I was so consumed for so many years with it. But once I was able to look at it as like my body's beautiful in an innate way of just saying, like, you need to start noticing, you need to focus, you need to start noticing. It was manifesting in this way, but what is the underneath the surface? Why is it actually happening? It's not, it doesn't have to do with the food, right? Like, it has to do with your emotional state of being. What is it that you need to pay attention to in order to bring that sense of peace within your own being? And once I was able to do that, then starting to understand and accept myself for that, and also recognizing that if things flare, it's not because I'm failing. It means that my body's trying to get my attention. So if I'm starting to notice that my mind goes in that direction, that I'm focusing on food, I'm focusing on my body, there's a distaste and all of it, right? Then I know that there's other things that I'm not paying attention to, and I need to refocus, and I need to recenter and bring in support systems to make sure that I stay on track. So for me, it's more a signal warning, a warning signal. Yeah.
It's an outstanding answer. Now, we both worked in emergency rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm sure I saw, and I'm sure you saw, is that the Western medicine can heal the physical damage. It can repair the broken bone, it can do the surgery, it can do whatever it takes. Now, the surgery may be successful, but one of the things that I learned with Western medicine, it doesn't address the deep emotional suffering, and particularly when I was in the 1970s. That was buck up, deal with it. Okay. So what impact, seeing both sides, seeing the Western and the Eastern, how did that help you address your demon as you went forward?
I think, like you said, because I was able to see, and especially, as you know, in the emergency, it's a quick, fast-moving pace in there, but always feeling like, oh, you could see what was under the underlying issue, and wishing that there was capacity to address all of that. And I think what was really beautiful in my career is that as I moved through that, more in the, I don't know, the 2000s, then it was, you would hear the physicians in the emergency room talking to their patients who thought they were having a heart attack, and they're giving their prescriptions for anxiety meds and said, have you ever thought of trying yoga or meditation? And it was like, thank you, thank you, because, just hearing that that was becoming part of the suggestions of self-care, and also that, yes, I can hand you this prescription to get you through this acute stage of something, but we need to have a long-term plan. So that way you're not here next week. And also, like I said, again, it's that agency piece, people feeling like that they have some sense of control over the outcome of how they're going to experience their day-to-day lives. And so though yoga and meditation, that may not be for everybody, I think it's important just to recognize that there's something that is, and to look beyond always needing somebody else to hand that to you.
That's excellent. Outstanding stuff. The holistic side is becoming more and more common. I've interviewed a lot of doctors who have said, I won't name any names, they said, we're failing our patients. We are creating, she said, we basically have become legalized drug pushers. And the standard of practice is you're given this pill, and if that doesn't work, here's 4 other ones. And I said, well, what would you prefer? She said, what I would prefer is to say, let's try this. Let's bring in someone like you. Let's bring in someone who can talk about Reiki. Let's talk about meditation. Let's talk about other options and alternatives, because she said, most of the battle is in your head. There's a physical manifestation, obviously, and we can address that. But if we don't get into your mind, if we don't get into your heart, it's not going to work.
Exactly.
Is that what you bring with your other modalities?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And so, like you had stated earlier, that I teach yoga for eating disorder recovery, and I work with a nonprofit, Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And it's just really interesting because what we teach in that program specifically is just these basic, tools to being able to manage your emotional mind, your being able to understand how you can affect your body, physiologically. How can you create, a different state within your being by tapping into your nervous system? And if people understood that, and it's interesting because I was a nurse, that wasn't necessarily the focus. And once I started, diving into the holistic field, recognizing that all of these things, like the chanting, the movement, the breath work, all of that was to trigger the nervous system to go into that relaxed state of being. And all of these things that we see people experience, and then maybe it isn't, as large of a diagnosis as cancer or something like that, but even just the daily dis-ease that you experience, GI symptoms, chronic headaches, migraines, all of this that make life so uncomfortable. It's like you can really affect those types of things. And I wish that was part of just, in school you learned about your body, about your nervous system, and what you could do. I can listen to music, I can move my body in this way, and up or down. If you're in a down state, these are the things I can do. If I'm in a highly anxious state, these are the things I can do to pull myself down. And I think, it's really unfair with the doctors. I feel like they've been kind of set up, because as we know, in the older generations, it's like you don't question the doctor. You just, you go, you do what they say, and there isn't that sense of agency of taking care of yourself. The doctor knows best, and you do, what it is that they've asked of you. So there wasn't a level of maybe self-inquiry, I think, necessarily. That's a broad brush stroke there, but like the culture around that. Now I think it's more focused at where they're recognizing, and because it's the system is overwhelmed. There's no way to manage all of this. So when we're looking at how are we going to rebuild, we rebuild by sharing the load, by giving some of the responsibility back to the patients to be able to to work on themselves on what they can work on.
It's absolutely the case. So many of the doctors have told me, you said it right perfectly, the system's overloaded. We cannot wait for disease or an illness to come, and then they come in and when we treat them. It's got to be much more of a proactive
Yes.
type of a program. When I love what you just said, Laura, and I've been pushing this for a long time, is to start moving this into the education system.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about relaxation. Let's talk about breathing. Let's talk about that as part of your physical and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And that can even go into, you have an aversion to math, like I did. All right. Life would have been so much better had I known how to breathe and breathe through it, and not just go, oh God, I don't know what this Pythagorean theorem is. I'm never going to use it. Why do I have to learn it? And you have that stress points. I love that point that you're making, and having programs like you have that can bring people in even before you become sick or before you're not feeling well. It helps. It helps to avoid some of those stress-related illnesses. Is that what you're finding?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I homeschool my boys, and that's been a big piece of things, of just trying to teach them how to manage their emotional selves and have that, regulation and resilience and understanding of what they're experiencing and what they can bring in to create that sense of balance. And whether, like I said, whether it's types of food or movement and all those different things, I used to feel like I was afraid of the world, of it all felt too much. People felt too much. The world felt too much. All of it felt too much. And being able to look at it through this holistic lens and an energetic lens. And that's what I found too, is like learning all these different modalities. It's just different expressions of energy. And it's been really cool to feel finally like not only am I a resource for myself, but the world is too. And to be able to look at it in that lens of there's support just waiting for me. It's just knowing what to pull out and what to access for me specifically at that specific time. And I think as well, like you're saying, when it comes to prevention, of really creating containers of support for ourselves. I work with this nonprofit. It keeps me healthy. When I'm teaching, I know that I have to be in integrity. If I'm not in integrity, it shines a light on the fact that, okay, I'm telling them that they need to X, Y, and Z, or did they do this week? But did I? And it really puts you in check, and it helps to keep me healthy, because I know that my tendency is that I can show up if I know I'm showing up for other people. But if it's just for me, then often gets on the wayside. So I know if I set myself up in structures, like you said, that proactive piece, right? I know that I'm teaching, then I know that I'm going to do all my practices to make sure that I am deeply grounded, that I am, present, that I am in this way, so that way I can serve and teach in the best way possible. And so it's keeping myself in those arenas to support myself as well.
I love that answer. I absolutely love that answer, Laura. When we're responsible for something or someone, we tend to be more engaged. But if it's for yourself, I'll get around to it. I'm not feeling it today. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then it continues to escalate. So being engaged in any kind of service to others also helps. Because someone told me one time, Frank, you're helping them, but you're helping yourself more.
Yeah, it often feels selfish.
Yeah,
like,
it's
please,
incredible.
I need to teach. Like,
yes,
yeah,
because
exactly.
it helps me too. I gain from it.
Yeah, well, and it's that community piece too, and connection. And as we know, when it comes to eating disorders or addiction or anything else, it's a isolating disease. And so when we can bring ourselves together to know that you're not alone, to be connecting, and you're always, there's always somebody you're one step ahead in your journey that you can hold, even if it's not espousing, your truths or whatever. It's even just holding space for them, of like the empathy that you can hold for someone else, of knowing where they've been, because as much as somebody who hasn't had an eating disorder um, can be compassionate and kind and hold space too, for when somebody's going through it, it is a different type of presence that you hold,
That's
because you know
absolutely
that
the
they
case.
can
That's
really relate.
absolutely, I
Yeah.
love that. It's absolutely the case. As I said, I'm a veteran, and I worked in something called a Veterans Treatment Court, which was as a volunteer. And these are veterans who committed a crime, but not a heinous crime, usually something stupid like drink driving or something like that, right? They relate better when they're talking to another veteran.
Yeah.
So in your case, you've had this, I've been through this,
Hmm.
I understand. And that's a huge part of it, because many folks, I'm sure you see this, is they think I am alone. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like.
Right.
And say,
Easy for you to say because you have X, Y, and Z in place. I have no idea, I have never been able to experience that. But yeah, when you know that somebody else has been in the trenches where you were and the depths of that, and were able to make it out. And I think that's what's so amazing, is that I feel like I kind of had two stages. I've had multiple, there's lots of, I feel like it's ongoing, but there was kind of the distinct, recovery phase of stabilizing and doing that. But then there was more of a discovery phase. And then I also had, there was, after I had my children, and I think in these big life changes too, people will notice that they might get triggered of like, oh, wow, I'm stumbling here in the self-care and noticing my thoughts are going in these, places that haven't been there for quite some time. And my anxiety and my depression were really cycling, and recognizing how I really needed to step it up and really manage my symptoms again. And I'm losing my train of thought, but I think it's when it comes to that, I just think it's really important to allow yourself to revisit, and to not feel ashamed if things, kind of resurface, and feeling like that you need to readdress and also readjust. It might be that your walking group worked, or the meditation worked, but it might be that doesn't work anymore, and there's something different that you need, and that it's okay to reach out for help again, in these different phases of life. So
I love what you're saying. I would strongly suggest you put together some kind of a membership program, and you put this out there, and you have people come, because there's so many people that just either they don't think I don't have time, or it's not going to work, or I'm not good enough, or I don't have the discipline. And you have a very calming presence, and he's talking to you is amazing, is that you can feel you speak from the heart, and you connect at the heart. And that's so important as you go forward in this type of a journey, isn't it?
yeah, thank you.
Wow. Well, Lara, we're just about out of time. What last thoughts do you want to leave with the audience around the world here today?
I think just that you're not alone if you're struggling, and to reach out for help, whether that's actually reaching out for a therapist, or just reaching out and asking for help, from your friends and family for support, just to not isolate, and to not feel alone in this process. We all, it's interesting with doing the eating disorder recovery work, recognizing like what we teach is what everyone needs. Everyone needs that information. And so it, like I said, it may manifest in different ways, but we're all going through the same human experience. And if we can just hold compassion and hold, empathy, and allow ourselves to truly be present with each other, then we'll recognize that we're all on the same page and can support one another. So
How can people find you, Lara?
I'm on larascriba.com, and I am on Instagram as well. My business name is Kita Kaizen Yoga, but if you type in Lara Scriba, it'll come up as well.
We'll find you.
On
Yes,
Facebook.
that's how I found you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As I said, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Lara again. This story shows that we all have demons. We can all address these demons. There are people there that will help us to adjust this. You don't have to fight this battle alone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can see this episode on LinkedIn and all the social media platforms. You can also see it on my YouTube channel, which is called Frank Zakari. If you see it on YouTube, please subscribe. And we just had two other things that have occurred to get more exposure for Lara is Parade Deck, which is a platform that deals with a lot with the military, but the military is a primary focus. They're also going to start carrying these interviews and these podcasts. And they're also available on podcasts on Spotify, iHeart, Alexa Music, whatever it is you like to listen to podcasts for. I'll send Lara a copy and the links to all these places, and she can put them up wherever she puts up all her information. So we're going to be easy to find. Let me leave you with this. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Lara showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week for another life-altering event. Lara, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Frank, for having me. I appreciate it.